IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hi guys, this is Faiza here, and today we have two very special guests with us, Marianne Thomas and Daniel Baylis. They are two bicyclists from North America who've been touring India on their bicycles, and guess what? They have covered more than 2,500 kilometers so far. Wow. Well, they've been doing this as a part of an informal education through which they aim to educate and familiarize themselves with the culture, people, and the amazing nature that India has to offer. So sit back and enjoy this ride as Marianne and Daniel explore India on their bicycles.
So with that introduction, I'd like to welcome Marianne Thomas and Daniel Baylis. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of the Musafir Stories and welcome to the podcast.
Hi guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. We're excited to chat with you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Daniel and Marianne, the introduction that we gave about you guys is pretty concise. Why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners a little about yourself, and when did you get this amazing idea to bike around?
So I went on a bike tour 3 years ago across the United States.
Oh, wow.
From San Diego, which is like near the border of Mexico, up the west coast to Vancouver, which is in Canada.
Oh my God.
And then across the north of the United States, and parts of Canada. So I finished my bike tour in Montreal, where Daniel lives. That was my first big tour. It was over 6 months, and I planned it alone. I ended up cycling with friends along the way and meeting people along the way, biking with them for certain portions. But for the most part, it was alone. And that was like my first big cycle tour. And I met people who had internationally toured or were internationally touring while I was on that ride. Kind of planted the seed in my head of wanting to do an international cycle tour. And my family is from Kerala. So I've been coming to Kerala from a young age, almost every year. I don't think I expected to be cycle touring in India. But it somehow worked out that way when Daniel asked me.
It's interesting that Daniel asked you because, at least Marianne has a little bit of a connection that her parents are from Kerala. But Daniel, what's your story?
So I am a writer and gone on a couple of big adventures so far. And I was thinking about what my next adventure would look like. And Marianne and I have been friends for 6 years. And I knew she had cycle toured across America. And I thought, maybe I would like to try also cycle touring. So I sent her an email last year at this time and just said, what are your top 3 countries that you would like to go explore on bicycle? And she came back with a list of 3, and one of them was India. And that immediately struck me as the best option for a variety of reasons. One, I have long since had a deep crush on India. And then I know Marianne also has roots here as well. So there's like a connection there. So I just wrote her back and said, should we be biking through India? And I think she wrote me back immediately and just said, yes, 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 yes.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit more, now that we know how this started and where the seeds of this were laid. How about the planning and the preparation? How long of a process was this? I'm sure it was not just that one email from Daniel and Marianne said yes. It probably took a little bit longer than that, right?
Well, so initially we shelved it. We said, we're enthusiastic now, but let's talk about it in March. So the March came around and we said, are we still thinking about this? We said, yeah, we're both still enthusiastic. So if we're both still on board by June, then in June we buy tickets. So really, it took much longer to actually buy tickets. We had to, research airlines and figure out what it would be like to travel with a bicycle on a plane. Neither of us have ever done that before. And figuring out like different prices. So there were a lot of small logistics that we had to figure out, and things like our route. If we were flying into Leh Ladakh, then do we need to acclimatize, and do we need water filters, and do we need camping gear? Like all those really small things that we had to kind of figure out. And then also figuring out what kind of specific gear we would need for cycling across the Himalayas, what kind of camping stuff we would need, whether we would be able to get like gas cylinders for our stove, or whether we would need to get a new stove. So there was a lot of like little gear research that is specific to India, because I had gone on my bike tour across the United States. I had most basic stuff, but really just needed to make sure that it would be relevant and compatible with conditions here.
Absolutely.
And I would love to know, what do you guys ride? Are they mountain bikes, or what kind of bikes are they?
So both of us have touring bikes. A touring bike is typically built for comfort rather than speed. So the shape is a little bit different. It's more of, I guess, a hybrid. Our touring bikes both have drop handlebars, which means that they kind of look like the shape of a road bike. But they have a little wider tires than local road bikes. And my bike has a steel frame, which is pretty common with a lot of touring bikes, because if your frame gets dinged in any village around the world, any welder can put it back together.
That's nice to know.
So a lot of cycle tourists ride on steel frames.
That's awesome. What about you, Daniela? I mean, we know that Marianne has had some experience biking and going around the United States, but what about you?
Yeah, so that was one of the advantages of us partnering up together, is because I got to sort of mooch off of Marianne's skill set. She brings a lot of knowledge to the table, which is great. Yeah. I've done a minor tour. I think it was a week long in the eastern part of Canada. And it was with an old bike, but thankfully my father is a cycle tourist, and he biked across Canada and was able to lend me his bike. So his is a Cannondale. It's about 20 years old, but it's still in great condition. And the gear came from family and friends. So in terms of the planning of this journey, we already had sort of the basics in place, which is a really great place to start. And from there, we had to go into the more specific things, as Marianne mentioned, like, will our stoves work in the Himalayas? And how are we going to get drinkable water if we are, for example, in the middle of nowhere? So those were some of the more challenging aspects to work out. But from the get-go, we both had like a base layer or a base level of gear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, that's good to know. And what about mapping out the route you wanted to take?
So one great thing about our dynamic is that both of us are okay with not planning. So when I think in one of the very, very first emails, Daniel said, like, where should we go? And I sent a very rough Google Maps estimate of just Leh Ladakh to Kanyakumari, with maybe one other point in between. And I was like, let's just do that. The nice thing about keeping it open is that we've been able to really take suggestions along the way. And that was something that was really important. Currently allows us to just, like, if somebody says, oh, go to the Golden Temple, we can, like, make sure we go to the Golden Temple. Or we just, like, a few days before we were going to be in Bihar, we figured out that Bodh Gaya exists. Like, we were often very ignorant about our route, and then somebody tells us what's coming up, and we can just go wherever we want. So the lack of planning ends up being a good thing.
Yeah, both of us are less attached to a specific route as much as keeping things open and flexible. I think we're both sort of gunning for Kanyakumari because of just like the symbolism of it being literally the end of the Indian subcontinent. So we really would love to reach Kanyakumari, but the road in between has been relatively flexible, and I think will continue to be.
Excellent. So, getting on with the interview, now that we have most of the things in terms of the preparation and the planning, I just wanted to ask, given that it's a road trip basically, right? So you guys are on the road. What do you guys carry? Because it's a long journey. It's not like a week that you don't have to worry about packing, say, clothes or first aid, medicine. There's only limited things that you can afford to carry, right? So what's your backpack, or like what do you have in them?
We have bicycles that, again, are designed for touring. On the back, they have a rack. And on this rack, we are able to strap on what are called panniers or saddlebags. Sort of, if you can imagine, a horse has saddlebags too. This is the same thing for bicycles. And they each hold, I would say, around 30 liters. So we have the capacity to carry a decent amount of gear, probably the same as like a long distance hiker would have. We have the same capacity. And we carry a tent, we carry a cooking stove, we carry a water filter, food, and then our clothes and just some personal items like our phone, our diaries, and yes, a health kit, first aid kit as well.
In the Himalayas, we did carry quite a few more layers, just for the cold weather. We were both carrying sleeping bags at that time. And then when we left the Himalayas, I ditched my sleeping bag and we sent quite a few things forward to Kerala. So I could send, I have uncles in Kerala. So we could send it via India Post and all our layers. And
yeah, I think they probably will reach Kerala by the time you reach Kerala as well.
We were shocked. It already arrived.
Oh my God.
I'm going to cut this out.
I mean, we were honestly very surprised. The postman literally took our box and threw it behind him.
Just over his shoulder, did not care he did not care at all about our package. And we're like, we hope we see those things again, but we don't know if we will.
and then I got a text saying that the uncle had received it. So it actually ended up quite well.
Yeah. Welcome to India, I guess.
Oh, totally. Yes.
Awesome. I think in terms of packing and preparation, we are pretty much there. Even though you didn't mention that you'd like to keep it flexible in terms of the route, do you have some kind of a time frame as to how long you have to cover this entire journey across India that you're planning?
Yeah, we started on September the 11th, and the goal for both of us, or sort of the time frame that we set aside, was around 4 months. So we would like to reach Kanyakumari by the end of December. That gives us another about 7 weeks from today. I think that's realistic, and we'll be moving at a speed that is comfortable. We don't feel rushed. So if somebody is thinking about biking across India, you could do it in 2 months if you really hustled your buns.
Like, we are the slowest and the laziest.
We prefer what we call a human race. A human pace.
So what's like a super productive day? Like, how many kilometers have you guys covered on a productive day?
Well, so we just finished in getting to Kolkata. We did our longest stretch of long days in a row. We went from Bodh Gaya to Kolkata in 5 days, which put us at doing an average of more than 100 kilometers a day. Our average generally is more like 80, but we can do like 100 a day if we want. It also varies depending on where we are. In the Himalayas, we would wake up late and ride into the late afternoon. But once we got out of the mountains and into Punjab and Rajasthan, it became very, very hot. And so mostly we've gotten into the habit of waking up just before the sun comes up and starting our ride by dawn, and kind of being done with most of the ride by 1 p.m. So there's usually not a huge pressure on making miles. It's just, what is reasonable to accomplish within that time frame.
So most days at the beginning of the day, we have an idea of where we would like to get to. And generally we do that. And maybe we've researched like the hotels in that region. And some days, especially when we were in a place like rural Rajasthan, where there's not necessarily a lot of services, we were like prepared to camp for those evenings. But at the beginning of the day, we'll be like, okay, if we want to do 70 kilometers today, where will we end up? And usually we'll gun for those destinations. One resource that has become extremely helpful to us is a little thing called dabas. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Oh, yes.
They're the rest stops of India. You don't find a lot of rest areas and rest stops like you do in the US and Canada, I'm sure.
Totally. So we eat many of our meals at dabas, and we also have slept at a couple dabas too. The first time we were just essentially arriving at dusk. The sun had set, and we didn't know where we were gonna stay. And it was in the sort of northern regions of Rajasthan. And there was a very kind man who was running this dhaba, and he like directed us to the cots that he had and said, well, you can stay here. And we were like, oh, that's awesome. I didn't know we could stay at dhabas. And suddenly a whole new world was unveiled to us. And we've slept at dhabas numerous times now.
Oh, great.
Excellent, Des. I am learning something new as well. Speaking to you guys. Yeah, never slept at a dhaba. See? That gives us a nice segue. So let's get on with the journey. I am excited. Faiza's excited to hear more about how you started, where you started from, and let's draw out your entire journey up to this point. September 11th to it's a couple months now. So you've spent a good amount of time. Let's go through your route and see what are the different experiences you've seen in this really diverse country. I'm sure you found out in terrain as well as in terms of culture and people around, right? So take us through this journey. Where did you guys start?
Sure. In a nutshell, I'll give you the summary of where we've been. We arrived to Leh Ladakh and acclimatized there for 4 days. And we took the National Highway 1 across the sort of the northern mountains into Srinagar. From there, we headed south into Jammu. Again, continuing south into the Punjab, we spent a few days in Amritsar, continuing into Rajasthan, where we were there for a good 10 days, including stops in Pushkar and Jaipur, and then over to Agra, did our sort of necessary selfie in front of the Taj Mahal. And from Agra, we actually cheated, and we took a train to Varanasi because we were, as much as like we appreciate Uttar Pradesh, we were told that it wasn't as scenic as some of the other regions in India. So we skipped over most of Uttar Pradesh by taking a train from Agra to Varanasi. From Varanasi, we continued east over to Bodh Gaya in Bihar, which is the place where the Buddha attained enlightenment.
Sure.
And then, as Marianne mentioned, we did a 5-day sort of hustle from Bodh Gaya into Calcutta, which was 531 kilometers over 5 days. And now we are in Calcutta, and from here we will go south along the east coast and finish again, hopefully, in Kanyakumari.
Excellent. And I have to say, very impressive with all the pronunciations as well, Daniel. Well done.
I've been training him.
Marianne. Yeah, I was going to ask if you've been training him, or have you just been taking a seat back and trying to laugh real hard when he messes up with one of them?
So honestly, guys, I'm faking the pronunciation. If I'm getting it right, it's complete a fluke. Okay.
He has a good teacher.
Thank you.
Yeah, tell us about Leh and Ladakh. I mean, that would have been a challenge in itself, right? Even though biking in itself, I'd say, is a challenge given the conditions, just the roads. But even in terms of the altitude and everything, how's that?
Yeah, so it was part of our original plan just to get there and catch our breath, literally. So we had budgeted 4 days just to acclimatize. And then we started the journey also pretty slowly. Like our first day, when we set out to think about where we're going to go, we aimed for 30 kilometers. And in retrospect, that's a very, very short day. But for that first day, it was enough. And the second day, I think maybe we did 50 kilometers. So we moved really slowly off the get-go. But Leh Ladakh was a great little city with a variety of attractions. I, in sort of like a moment of absent-mindedness, left my water bottle on the airplane. It had a special filtration system where, you could basically put it into any creek and sip water directly. So I went to a camping store in Leh, and they also had a similar water bottle where I could essentially use any water source to drink from. So Leh was really set up for adventurers and has the services in place.
Yeah, it has caught on, especially in the last few years, I would say. A lot of people even from India, like other parts of India, have started traveling to Leh Ladakh just for the beauty of it. It's completely different from the rest of the India, right? So a lot of people have started going there, and a lot of people have started riding their motorbikes there. So it's one of the hot spots for all these guys who like to motorbike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got lots of thumbs up from motorbikers along the Himalayan route, and like lots of cheering, and yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, I have a question. I would love to know how your experience with food has been so far, and what has been your favorite dish apart from Maggie?
So, like, no offense to everywhere else in India, but I love Punjabi food. I also love momos and thukpa. I also love the food in Kolkata, Bengali food.
Bengali sweets, you would definitely have to try the Bengali sweets.
Yes. Bengali sweets have been unreal delicious. Yeah. We bought a whole box right before this today. But yeah, it's really been incredible to go between states and have such a huge variety of food.
That's true.
There was one point in Rajasthan where there was a man who was telling us, Burundi. He was saying, you'll get to a town called Burundi, and then they'll have kachori. And he was trying to describe what kachori was to us, and we had never seen it, never heard of it. And when we got to that town, we were like, well, there's this little fried ball. Let's try that. And we sat down. We had a cup of chai. We ate the fried ball, and then like we saw that people were eating the fried ball in a little bowl of soup, and then we left. And then like days later, we were like, "Oh, that was kachori." So then all throughout that was in Rajasthan. Rajasthan was the first time we saw kachori, and then almost every day we ate kachori after that. So it's a good example because I think it just shows how different all the food in India is. If you go to one area, you'll find something plentifully, and if you go to another, you won't. Like in Rajasthan, everything was pure veg. We never ate any meat, never found any eggs. But in Bengal, it's very easy to find meat.
But I'm patiently waiting to hear what Daniel has to say about this. Does he have good stories about food?
I am a big fan of carbohydrates, so I enjoy all of the chapatis, the naans, the puri, like the deep fried breads. Very nice for me. And I have like a medium tolerance to spice, so I'm usually on board with all the types of dals, the chanas that we've had along the way. I love the paneers. I'm a big fan of cheese, and also chai everywhere. Like, there's no point where I've had too much chai. To be honest, Maggie and chai has served us so well. It was always something that we could eat and feel very comfortable, that would sit well on our stomachs. Like Marianne said, it took a few, I would say 2 weeks for our stomachs to really become accustomed to the various spices, the oils, even the bacteria that exists in food around the world. We just had to grow accustomed to the Indian version of those bacteria. So there was certain times where our stomachs, we weren't necessarily feeling super hot, but Maggie and chai was always good to us.
My girlfriend Maggie.
Awesome. And you need those carbs. You guys are burning it up anyway. But Punjab is paradise, as you said, in terms of food. I've heard that from a lot of people too. And I also saw in some of your pictures, Marianne, that you were there in Amritsar, I believe, during Dussehra. So how was that experience?
Yes, that was like top 5 experiences on this trip. Top 5 24-hour period. So that's how I like to mark things, is like, if we have a really good 24-hour period, that like makes the list. So the day of Dussehra, I think that was the day we went to the Golden Temple, and I received a langar, and then we were told. So like, my family is from South India, from Kerala, and because Kerala has a huge Christian population, and my family is Christian, a lot of the festivals and holidays that are celebrated throughout India are things that I'm not familiar with. So I'm not familiar with Dussehra. I'm not familiar with Diwali. So we knew that there was a festival happening in Amritsar, but we didn't know what it was, and I had never heard of it. And so basically we went looking for a SIM card, and then just asked our auto rickshaw driver if he could take us to the festival. And at first he had no idea what we were talking about. And then we pulled up a Wikipedia page that said Dussehra, and had a photo of Ravana. And he was like, "Oh, you want to see Ravana burn? Okay. I know where to take you now." So he took us to like their Dussehra grounds in Amritsar, where there were people selling food, and like people dressed as gods and goddesses marching in on horses, very decorated, very colorful. There were snakes involved. It was very entertaining. And then we met a couple of folks, a couple of young men. Like, there are lots of people who will want to talk to Daniel. He stands out in a crowd. Sometimes the folks who want to talk to Daniel are just in it for the selfie. And then sometimes there are people who are like very interested in sharing their culture with us. And so there were a couple young men who were like, "Oh, you don't know what's going on. Like, let's explain all this story to you." So they told us about the, history of Dussehra, essentially. We spent some time with them, and then when the anticipation was building for everything to blow up, we were like being pushed to the front of the crowd, and we ran into them again, and we started getting really surrounded by people. And, people were drinking, people were like goofing around. It was mostly young men. And very quickly it turned from like, "Oh, we're all having a good time," to like, oh, people are noticing Daniel too much. And they're noticing me as like the only woman in this crowd too much. And then those young men, they were like, oh, when this blows up, that everybody's going to start sprinting because it gets so hot. So you should leave now. They're basically like, you shouldn't be here.
Oh.
So we kind of, well, we stayed there. We like just went to the side, and like waited and watched. And then like once everything blew up, it did get super hot and everybody started sprinting. And then we started sprinting because we were like, we don't want to get caught in this madness.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So.
And it must have been a unique experience, right? Watching something that big of an effigy blow up.
Yeah, I mean, I think for both of us, it was the most dramatic public event we've ever been to.
So how's Daniel doing? Enjoying the attention so far?
Overall, yes. We get stopped on the highway of people who just want to take selfies with us. I think we present sort of an odd couple of people, an odd duo, with a brown girl and a white guy traveling together. And then you throw in a couple of bicycles there and people are just very confused.
That's true.
But we love that, and we are very happy to take selfies with people who ask politely. But that specific evening of Dussehra was probably the most intense of this phenomenon. I was personally getting approached by a variety of people just for selfies. Like young men lining up to shake my hand, which was again very flattering. But as it went on a little bit more and more, and people had more alcohol in them, it started to border a little bit more aggressive. So I grew a little bit more uncomfortable, and that's sort of when we stepped to the side and moved towards the exit. But to answer the question, overall, yeah, I love the attention.
Enjoy your time as a celebrity here.
Yeah, I now know how Justin Bieber feels.
Wonderful. And I also noticed from one of your pictures that you also happen to be riding right around Diwali, right?
Yeah, so that was a really special experience. Daniel had mentioned earlier, but we have been using a website called Warm Showers. So any potential cycle tourists out there should definitely look this up. It's just a website called warmshowers.org that is used for cycle tourists and people who are willing to host cycle tourists. So one of our hosts in Jaipur, was part of the larger like Jaipur cycling community. Okay. And so when we first arrived in the city, he introduced us to basically the man who started it all. He had started a bike shop, I think 8-10 years ago, and kind of got a lot of the younger folks involved in cycling as a sport, and taught people how to do repairs on their bikes and how to bike with gears and all that kind of stuff. So he introduced us to this gentleman who then invited us to come on a Diwali Eve ride. So the bike ride was through Jaipur Old City at night with all the lights, with all the city lit up really. And so we biked around, we saw a lot of fireworks, and yeah, it was really amazing to be part of a group ride. There's a lot of power in riding bikes as a group. You can take up more space and you feel a lot safer, and the mentality is a little bit different if you're one person in like a sea of traffic versus a whole host of bikes, and you can kind of own the road a little bit more. We also got to meet a lot of really awesome folks.
That's true. But I was going to say that Jaipur is a beautiful city in itself, but having been there on Diwali Eve must have been even special, with the city being completely kind of bright with light and even colors for that matter. Rajasthan is a very colorful place. So I'm sure it was a very nice experience. Probably in your one of your top 5 as well, Marianne?
Definite top 5. Yeah, you got that right.
Awesome. But it's really heartwarming to hear about these other bike groups and people coming forward to help you guys and host you guys as well, right? It makes things much easier getting about the city, and you don't have to kind of struggle so much to get to some even good places. Like some places are so offbeat, you might, even though you have internet and everything these days, it might be hard to find those spots that say a local would kind of advise, right? You probably felt that too.
100%, yes. For example, again, we're in Calcutta right now. We're with a host from Warm Showers who is so welcoming to us. And tonight, after our conversation, we're going to eat Bengali cuisine that she has made for us. Yesterday, we did a little bit of a tour around the more downtown area, visited some cycle shops, went to some cafes that we would never have found on our own. So it really is a connection to a local community. So yeah, we highly recommend this website to anybody who's out there and wanting to go cycling.
Good stuff. And I guess I shouldn't hold you for too long because Daniel is already waiting for that nice meal he's going to have after this conversation.
Yeah, no worries.
So Marianne, talking about these top 5 experiences that we have covered 2. How about covering one more of these experiences so far? Because I'm pretty sure it's going to change by the time you reach Kanyakumari. So let's go with one of them now.
Yeah, I think one of them for both of us is the day we crossed Zojila Pass in the Himalayas. That was a big day. I'm trying to think of where we started that day.
We started in the northern Himalaya town of Dras. It is they on their signs in the city, they pride themselves as being the second coldest city in the world. Uh-huh. So that morning we woke up and we had sort of a crappy sleep. Our stomachs were not in good shape. In fact, we were suspicious that the hotel had bed bugs, so we had literally set up our tent in the hotel room to protect ourselves from the bed bugs. We got to start at I don't know, as the sun was rising, and we were both tired, but we pedaled, and it's hard to be really miserable on a bicycle when you're surrounded by gorgeous mountains. So our mood slowly improved. At about, I guess it was around noon, we stopped, and there was a sign that said Army Cafe. So we went and had momos and Maggie with a couple of Army sergeants who were very welcoming. And from then we asked them what's the next pass? And they said, well, you're going to go through Zojila. And we were we didn't really know what to expect. But it turned out to be stunningly gorgeous and also super challenging.
So one of the challenges is that it's not paved. And as you're riding bikes that are best fit for the road, so we're going on gravel and just rumbling up and down. And at some point, Daniel just walked his bike. And then at other points, we're going through just dirt and sand. And at one point, it turned into cobblestone. And I cannot emphasize enough how strange it is to be riding in the Himalayas and then have cobblestone appear. We're just didn't expect it at all, and it's so uncomfortable to ride on.
So Marianne's point, painting it as a horrible hard journey, and it was that. And you guys are probably wondering why is this in your top 5? One, the scenery is just so amazing, and we literally crossed a sort of an ecological divide where we went from mountains that were completely sparse and brown and gray and purple, and we went over the pass and we came into this valley, and it was just lined with pine trees and smelled of pine, and it was one of the most gorgeous smells that you could possibly imagine. And this windy switchback road that was dust and dirt and potholes, it opened up to the most gorgeous, clean, smooth, black pavement. And for those 12 kilometers, the last 12 kilometers of the day brought us into the town of Sonamarg. Sonamarg?
Yeah,
Sonamarg.
Yeah.
And I would say that those 12 kilometers, it just felt, because we had been over so many bumps and like we were
rattled.
We were rattled. That's the perfect word for it. Those 12 kilometers of smooth pavement, it literally felt like I was flying, and it was just coasting downhill. So really, really beautiful.
Awesome. So it's been one hell of a ride so far, and I'm sure you're loving every bit of it. So right now you guys are in Kolkata. So what's the plan next? Where you guys headed off to? How long are you here in Kolkata for?
We are in Calcutta for a few nights, and tomorrow we are going on a mini adventure from our bigger adventure. We're going to go to the Sundarban National Park for a 3-day tour on a boat. It is Marianne's birthday on Tuesday, so we will be celebrating her birthday with tigers.
Amazing.
We're expecting a lot of wild tigers to show up and help us celebrate this birthday.
I plan on milking.
They'll probably blow the candles and the cake as well.
Yeah, well, if they don't, it's going to be very rude. So we will return to Calcutta later in the week, and then spend maybe a couple more nights, maybe 2 nights, and then head south again through Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu. Did I say those things correctly?
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
He's doing great, Marianne.
Slowly. It's been 2 months.
Yeah. It's been a long time to learn it.
Excellent. And when is the trip to Kanyakumari planned for?
We will go straight to Kanyakumari through Tamil Nadu, and then Kerala will be afterwards. So my family comes to Kerala every year, and my immediate family, I mean, comes to Kerala every year, and so they'll be there at the end of January. So I'll go to Kerala afterwards, and we have to go to my uncle's house to pick up our package. So we might hang out in Trivandrum for a little bit.
For us, Kerala will be all about relaxation and not necessarily cycling, of just like, wow, this is like our prize at the very end.
Absolutely. And Marianne, make sure you take him to one of those Ayurvedic massage centers.
Yeah.
It's well earned.
Yeah, lots of fun Kerala things we're gonna do. So
awesome. And guys, how can one follow your trip?
So I post pretty much daily on Instagram. My handle is postcards from Matt. That's the word postcards from MAT, which are my initials. So just MAT. And then I'm also on Facebook under my name, Marianne Thomas. And Danny is actually off social media.
Yeah, I'm not doing a lot of social media just so we can focus on the trip itself. But if people are using an app called Strava, they can find me there. It's an app for cyclists and runners. It helps us track our kilometers every day, as well as giving us maps and showing our speeds and our altitudes. So it's a nice little tool, Strava. And if people want to find out just more about me, they can go to my website at danielbaylis.ca, and maybe you can throw up some links to all the websites that we're mentioning.
Absolutely. We'll include all of these links in the show notes section of the podcast, so that way our listeners will have ready access to those, and hopefully they will be able to follow the rest of your journey as well, and keep in touch with all the fun you guys are having. Why should you guys have the fun alone, right?
Our fun is your fun.
Yeah, we're here to share.
And by the way, Marianne, I love your Instagram posts. They're not just posts, they're little stories in themselves. So very descriptive. And I mean, you have to indulge in reading them. You just can't look at the pictures and move on. They're that good.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's nice feedback to hear.
Awesome. And guys, as we inch closer towards the end of the podcast, I just wanted to ask in terms of, say, advice in terms of biking or just traveling around India, safety and all of that, because as you had mentioned, there were probably a lot of concerns and apprehensions when you guys signed up for this, essentially, right? So how has that been? And what are some tips you would like to give to listeners and potential bikers who are planning something like this?
Yeah, the number one thing I tell every person who asks me for bike touring advice is that there are like a million ways to be a bike tourist, and that you really don't need a specific kind of bike. You don't need the perfect gear. You don't need like the perfect setup. You will figure it out. Like no matter how prepared or unprepared you feel like you are, the most important thing is to get out there and do it. And bicycles are really, really sturdy machines. So if things aren't perfect, if something goes mildly wrong, it's typically very easy to fix. The thing that I would say that I've learned the most about bike touring in India is that cycling here is like cycling anywhere. I thought it would be a lot different than my bike tour in the US in terms of the actual work of cycling. But people are so good to cycle tourists. People are so good to you when you're working for your miles. And so there were a lot of fears that I had about being a woman and traveling through, places where people aren't used to seeing women be very mobile. And we've been treated exceptionally well. I really did not need to be that worried. So
on my end, I think it's really helpful to, if you're thinking about cycling in India, if you can find a partner to do it with, a friend, it would make it easier just in terms of navigating the roads, everything. As like the other day, I needed to go into the bank, so Marianne watched the bikes. So going with somebody it makes things so much more practical, so much easier. There's safety in numbers, of course. But I also want to reiterate like the fact that we have felt overwhelmingly safe in this nation. And, I hope that continues to be the case, but, I would like to dispel any sort of stereotypes or concerns that India is not a safe place to travel, because, our experience is quite different from that.
Sure. And it's really, really nice to hear that, you guys have had plenty of heartwarming experiences so far. And we sincerely hope, wish, and pray that the rest of your journey is as blissful and enjoyable as the journey so far has been. That way more people are encouraged, even locals for that matter, right? A lot of Indians also are concerned about safety. It's not just people from outside. So I think it's a genuine concern, but as long as one is aware, I think a majority of the people are kind of helping. So I do hope that outdoors and cycling, biking, anything does catch up, and people do go out and explore this beautiful country that is India.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Guys, it's been an amazing experience listening to all your stories. I really hope that you have a wonderful time ahead, and please do plan to come to Bangalore. We should meet you guys.
Yeah, it would be so great to meet you guys. Thank you guys so much for your time and setting this up.
Oh, thank you so much for being a part of the Musafir Stories.
Yeah, thanks so much. And we really look forward to hearing more updates from you, and all the best for the rest of the journey. And good luck, guys. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was yet another great episode of the Musafir Stories. If you guys like the show, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Audioboom, Stitcher, Pocket Radio, or any other podcasting app that's available on iOS or Android. You could also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We go by the handle The Musafir Stories. Or, if it suits you, you could email us at themusafirstories@gmail.com and visit our website www.themusafirstories.com for more information. All of these links will be made available in the show notes section of the podcast. So here's to more traveling, sharing, and inspiring. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, happy travels and goodbye.